Countless people who find themselves on the brink of life and death describe experiences that go beyond logic and common sense. These moments, filled with striking visuals and deep emotions, often change their understanding of existence and what might happen after. Although science is trying to explain these phenomena, they remain a deep mystery. In this video, we'll look at some of the most fascinating stories from Reddit about near-death experiences. The first story. My NDE unlocked all my memories of pre-birth and being a baby, and I now need therapy to cope with it all. I've had a strange near-death experience and haven't found anything quite like it. Most people talk about feeling peace or improvement after an NDE, but mine wasn't like that at all. Here's what happened. I'd been feeling off for a while before my NDE, but I didn't really understand why. Fast forward to the point where I had an NDE during childbirth. It wasn't as dramatic as some other stories I've heard, but it still stands out. I had an out-of-body experience, but I kept slipping in and out of my body. There were otherworldly beings in the room with me. And outside, the windows were filled with a bright white light. Strange, because I gave birth in the middle of the night. I knew I was dying, and I tried to tell the nurses, but they ignored me. Dying didn't feel bad, just uncomfortable. It was like everything inside me was shutting down. The weird thing is, even though I felt like I was out of it for just a minute, I was later told I was actually unconscious for 45 minutes. I remember being told something important, but I couldn't recall it afterward. What stuck with me was a vivid memory of my birth, being a newborn, and moments from my childhood that still trouble me now. One thing that stood out was the feeling that I was planning my life. It was as if I had just left one life behind and was being thrown into a new one. Almost like a now or never moment. The life I left behind was incredibly painful and was cut short. To make up for that life being taken prematurely, I was given a chance to start over, to jump straight into a new life. I vividly recall shooting through the cosmos, or something like it, and back to Earth. The anxiety I felt about being reborn was overwhelming, though. I was terrified that this new life would turn out just as terrible as the last one. I remember coming into this world as a baby, feeling completely confused. It was as though half of my memory was erased, but half remained, and that caused some problems. As a baby, I always felt older, but not having any control over my body was incredibly frustrating. I was confused by everything around me and the world in general, but at the same time, I had an understanding of certain things. I knew how to talk, but I couldn't. It was like being trapped in a body that didn't function, and that only made things worse. All I could do was cry, and I cried a lot as a baby. Looking back, I now realize it was the anxiety of starting over and being stuck in a body that couldn't communicate or do anything. Imagine waking up tomorrow and being unable to walk, talk, eat, or take care of yourself. You'd probably freak out too. The only comfort I had was from my mom. I knew her from a previous life, and she was the only familiar presence around me. According to my mom, I cried almost non-stop for the first 4 months, so much that I was hospitalized at one point because doctors were concerned about how intensely I would scream without stopping. As I got older, I started adapting to life on Earth, but there were still things I couldn't grasp or didn't like. I remember, on the other side, being able to fully immerse myself in everything around me. Colors weren't just colors, and flowers weren't just flowers. You could experience them with all your senses. You could taste, touch, hear, see, feel, and be with everything. I didn't like that you couldn't do that here. I had this bright green turtle toy that I desperately wanted to merge with and experience fully. But here, that's impossible. I didn't understand why you couldn't just be something like you could on the other side. Here, you had to walk to places. You couldn't just be there. Until I was about 7, I could still see, hear, and interact with people who had passed. It confused me a lot, having relationships with people in my house who only I could see. What really bothers me now is understanding what Earth truly is. It's nothing more than a game or a dream. It's not reality. Earth is like a fishbowl compared to what really exists. We're living in this confined, manufactured space, trapped in bodies, and everything here is a poor imitation of what's out there. This whole experience is just that, an experience, not reality. Now, knowing this, I often feel claustrophobic in my own body and trapped on Earth. It makes sense why our memories are wiped before we come here. Because knowing too much about the truth of existence makes life here uncomfortable, even depressing. There's still so much I don't understand, so much that doesn't make sense, and so much I can't remember. But it's left me feeling anxious and deeply unsettled. The second story, a brief report from my NDE. Ram Dass once described death as death is like removing a tight shoe, and I've found that to be the simplest, most accurate description I've encountered. He reached this insight through meditation and altered states of consciousness. He didn't need to physically die to understand it. I, however, experienced a brief moment of clinical death, just a few minutes in Earth time. Yet in that brief span, I was undeniably dead. What struck me immediately as I crossed into that other realm, a place beyond the body, was that I was still me. Mentally, I was exactly who I am right now, but with an overwhelming sense of more. It's difficult to explain, but imagine that your total mental energy is like liquid, carefully distributed throughout your being. A portion of it is dedicated to the experience of having a body, and the rest forms your thoughts, emotions, dreams, ego, and sense of identity. When I passed, the energy bound to the body was released and flowed back into the mental realm, joining the energy that was already there. It felt like when a restricted blood flow is restored to an arm or leg, suddenly life floods back in. For me, this felt like the removal of a tight shoe, and my presence in that realm was magnified. I was there, crystal clear, ultra real, and I was still me, only more present. Our language struggles to capture the essence of the NDE realm. Art and poetry get closer to it, but the best I can offer is this. I felt as safe as a child falling asleep in the arms of a loving mother, in a familiar room surrounded by strong, protective adults. The safety was absolute, and all the fears and threats of earthly life were simply gone, as though they had never existed. I felt a profound, abstract understanding that I was seeing through all fears, recognizing their illusory nature, like waking from a nightmare and realizing, phew, just a dream. Or as it's expressed in A Course in Miracles, only that which is good is real. That is exactly what I experienced. I was greeted by beings whose features I couldn't visually recognize, yet I knew exactly who they were. I won't go into the specifics of who they were or why they were there. The welcome itself, though, is something I'll try to express through an allegory because I love them. Imagine you're running a superhuman marathon. It's been going on for years. You're out there, struggling, but along the way, there are moments of joy and relaxation, stations where you refuel, others running beside you for a time, the scenery and weather changing constantly. Over time, the run becomes your whole reality. You faintly recall talk of a finish line, but it seems distant and abstract, even intimidating, because all you know is yourself as the runner. Then suddenly you cross the finish line. This, in my allegory, is bodily death, and there they are, those who love you, those who once ran beside you, those you've missed and even forgotten. But they're all there, and they're so overjoyed to see you. It's a beautiful surprise. You fall into their arms, they wrap a warm blanket around your shoulders, and in that moment, you know everything is finally okay. That's pretty much what it was like. Then, the purple sky around me ruptured, and a light filled my universe. A love even greater than before washed over me, and for the first time, I could feel parts of my ego identity begin to peel away and fall off. It was an extraordinary experience. I cried with relief and surrender, and all that remained was light. I'll leave it here. I needed to express this, so thank you for reading. Have faith. Don't fear. Embrace love and compassion in your life. It is truly the language of God. Dear friends, I thank you for watching my video. I will be very grateful to you if you put a like under this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important. I wish you all the best in this world. See you soon.